that looked like a lot of fun, it's because today we are actually reviewing the brand new Staccato P4X. So what is the Staccato P4X that has been just blowing up all over social media the last week or so? And that is going to actually be the slide of a C4X, which is the smaller, more compact grip gun, and it has been replaced with a full-size grip and a stainless steel frame. So when I shot for various videos the C4X, it was a very well-performing shooter. However, with my larger hands, I really didn't find the gun very comfortable shooting for extended periods of time. I definitely noticed getting some big hot spots and just really having to work hard to get my entire hand on the pistol. And when I heard they were coming out with a full-size frame version, I was very intrigued and was quite curious about how this was going to perform when I could get my entire hand comfortably on the pistol. We now have it, so let's dive in. Now let's do a quick overview of some of the features on the new Staccato P4X. And as I had already mentioned, this has the slide, the 4-inch slide of the Staccato C4X, along with their full-size frame from some of their other HD models. And it has a lot of the same features that the C4X and other HD pistols have, but there's a couple cool, I guess, things to point out and just note in general with the HD line. So first, because I'm such a nerd for optic plates and optic plate systems, the new HD line is actually super, super solid for a couple reasons. First off, I am a massive fan of the rear dovetail sight being in front of the optic. Now, it doesn't make a huge deal. I shoot plenty of red dot guns with the backup sight behind the optic. However, just in general, it's much, much easier to kind of not get stuck looking at that rear sight or having it get into my vision. And it's just a lot easier for me to focus on the dot, and they're still there if I need them for some reason. The other big thing is with these new plate system, you actually have it sitting much farther back. It actually goes all the way to the rear of the slide, and that allows the use with the right plates, of course, optics like the RMR HD or the SRO, without having to worry about interfering with this front sight. You also have some really cool fluting that has been done on the barrel hood, which basically is just some channels cut out to allow debris to move through there without causing any issues. And one of the really cool things is actually going to be on the bottom of the barrel. So you actually have fluting on the bottom, sort of 4 to 5 o'clock and 7 to 8 o'clock spots on the slide, as well as some fluting on the inside that you can see through these windows that is definitely there to sort of help move debris around and keep it from gunking up the firearm. So Staccato sort of marketed this as a duty gun, or the next big duty firearm, and that, at least for me, shows that there was a lot of intentionality to it. Very often, and you see this on some higher end 1911s and 2011s, there will be all sorts of different types of fluting on the barrel hood as well as on the top of the slide. And the fact that they put it in a place that is not very noticeable kind of goes to show that it wasn't really put there for show. It actually was put there for a purpose. So there was some intentionality in the design of this pistol. This is also completely ambidextrous. So you have pretty much identical right and left-handed thumb safeties, which is nice because typically on most of these, even though they might have ambidextrous thumb safeties, the left side is usually much smaller. So if you're a left-handed shooter, that is a pretty big plus. You also have the same on the slide stopper slide release. And not only is this ambidextrous on both sides, but has extended paddles on both sides as well. So that's a really nice feature. I obviously can reach it without having to really move my support hand. But if I'm being honest, that's not really how I would ever use this. I would still be loading mag, hitting the button, and then just coming into my grip. And that's just a personal preference thing, I think, for me. But it's worth noting that it's possible if you have smaller hands and or you have really large hands, you can access that now with your dominant hand. You even have the mag release that can be switched from right side or left side pretty seamlessly, and a really generous mag well on this particular model. So this is going to be the level 3 model from Staccato, and they have 3 different tiers. So basically a basic tier, a mid tier, and then this sort of higher tier that comes with the X serrations. And so with the medium and high tier, you get this mag well with it that is a really nice touch. Very often, I know this isn't technically a 2011, but very often in the 2011 world, a lot of these mag wells will look really nice for carry, but when you turn them over, they're really not doing a lot in terms of giving you an extra little bit of opening and margin of error for loading mags. So that's actually nice to see that that is a generous opening for the mag. Now let's talk about this one-piece compensator that's built into the barrel. So this is a 4-inch barrel with a one-piece compensator on it. And I kind of want to talk about compensators a little bit in general, especially with the way that this one was designed. So you'll notice in this compensator, it's actually bored down a good bit deeper than the muzzle of the firearm. And that allows a lot of the gas when this is being shot to go down and then get directed upwards a lot more violently. And I think a lot of times you don't see that a lot in just compensators that are slapped on or built into firearms typically. A lot of times I will not see a ton of material sort of taken out inside the compensator to make it more effective, but very often, this is why I'm really not a big fan of sort of chunk ports, or what some companies are calling comped models now, where they just have taken the normal slide and cut a big chunk in the front of the gun. Those do not really work very well. And all of the ones I really have shot have not given me any noticeable major difference in shootability or kind of the feel of the gun in recoil. And so the fact that they've really thought this design out well 100% shows in the shooting portion of this, which we'll get to. The other last kind of major thing, especially from a duty perspective, is going to be that this is what is called a Series 80. So Colt created a Series 80 many decades ago, which basically had a firing pin block that you had to move out of the way as part of the trigger press. So as you're pressing the trigger, it moves a firing pin block out of the way so that the hammer can fall and the firing pin can strike the round that you're shooting. So with the Series 80, there's one sort of big advantage and one sort of disadvantage. The biggest disadvantage would be that it makes the trigger pull heavier and a bit mushier, if that makes any sense. Very often, what people love about this platform and the single action nature of triggers in 1911s and 2011s, they are incredibly crisp and incredibly clean and relatively light. And this has a really good trigger. It's probably at about 5 pounds. And you can sort of see as I pull this trigger, it has a little bit of mush right there before the trigger wants to go off. I mean, it's not major, especially with this. This is probably one of the better Series 80 triggers that I have fired, but it is still worth noting. Now, why did they put a Series 80 in this? And this comes into the big advantage with Series 80 designs, and that is it makes this completely drop safe because the firing pin is completely blocked from actually being able to strike anything or fall. So with the Series 70, which is what most of your 2011s or 1911s are, it is technically not drop safe. However, the only way that it can fire or have the hammer drop / firing pin drop is for the gun to land pretty much exactly at 90 degrees on the muzzle. And I don't think I've ever seen a case of that or anybody having talked about having seen it or experienced it. So I don't think it is something that's really a huge concern, but at least if you're carrying something for duty and you have big organizations or federal departments kind of looking through these things, the less liability that you can take on, the better. So that's definitely a plus, at least in terms of if you're throwing your gun around or if you end up in some precarious situations. It's at least good to know and a little bit of a relief to know there's not going to be any issues if you drop this. And last but certainly not least is going to be the MechGuard mags. So these are actually 18 rounds, which I know there's some magazines in the 2011 world coming out now that are 18 or 19 rounds, But typically your standard 126 millimeter magazine for a 2011 is going to be 17 rounds. So you're getting an extra round in this, and with these mags over the Glock mags, they are metal, so they're going to be a lot sturdier. However, the awesome thing is in a pinch, or if you just already have a ton of Glock mags laying around, this will take the full-size Glock mags. So that's a big plus in terms of versatility for this platform. Okay, so now let's talk about duty, because that is going to be a major theme that revolves around any discussion with the new Staccato P4X. So I outfitted this with a RCR, which is arguably the best red dot on the planet right now, and you can fight me in the comments if you disagree, because I feel like I'm in the minority on this one, but it's just the best. And we also have an X300 Surefire, mostly so I could draw from this with appendix, because all of my holsters that I have are light bearing. So that made it really easy for me to just swap and use my own holster to do some drawing and various other drills that we'll get to. But this is going to be a really familiar setup in some way. Obviously, you can change the red dot out if your department uses something different, or you just have one of these and want to put something different on it. But it is very well suited for running a tactical light as well as a red dot. Pretty much this was designed to run a red dot, which is why they put the irons forward. And with that, obviously comes a lot of scrutiny or questions about the durability, the reliability, the accuracy of this. And so Staccato actually used the FBI Ballistic Research Facility, or their research lab, to do a ton of testing on this in adverse conditions, with reliability, with accuracy, and put this through a gauntlet of tests to push the pistol itself to the limit to see what actually could make this thing stop. And it passed all of their tests with flying colors. I'm not really sure if they ever ran into issues and then went back to the drawing board and then sent them stuff again, but this was well received from that research laboratory, which is well regarded in the research space. So with that being said, there's a couple of tests that we ran this thing through to see if in real life it can stand up to the test of both everyday carry as well as durability. So first up, we have the accuracy test. Okay guys, so we're gonna test the practical on-range accuracy of the Staccato P4X. Now this thing comes with a pretty impressive test target from the factory, which I don't think I'm gonna beat, but we'll give our best shot at it. We're about 7-8 yards away. I can live with that. Let's look at this. So what you see here is 5 shots. Now, this might not be as good as the factory test target, but it's pretty darn good. And I've got to say, for a comped gun, I can live with this all day. I would be happy with this group any day of the week. So I think we can determine that it's pretty accurate. Okay, so as you guys see, this thing is a tack driver. I shot this at about 8 to 10-ish yards. I wasn't exactly counting, but I've got to say it was really easy to shoot. I talked about the heavier trigger earlier, and that was no issue whatsoever. I can say without a doubt, having my entire hand on this grip comfortably really just gave me a much better structure for my grip and allowed me to really run this gun fast as well as accurate. So if you're looking for something that will put rounds on top of each other, this will definitely fit the bill. And so next up, obviously, one of the major issues that would be something that you want to test for a duty or EDC gun would be reliability. So I shot about 500 rounds of just standard full metal jacket through this with 0 malfunctions. I ran it incredibly hard, even to the point where the gun itself was getting fairly hot, and ran about 100 rounds of different self-defense ammo through it, including the 124 grain plus P Gold Dot, the 115 grain Barnes TAC XP, and the 147 grain Federal HST, and it ran all of that perfectly fine. And those are definitely higher quality rounds as opposed to your standard full metal jacket. So the groupings with that were even more impressive, believe it or not. So it ran absolutely everything I could throw at it. It's definitely something that I would test myself personally with any firearm that I was going to carry. I would run at least 100 to 200 rounds of the carry ammo that I would be choosing to run through it, just so I have that peace of mind that there's nothing wonky going on or no kind of weird lemon issues happening. But this ran everything perfectly fine. So at least for me, and to corroborate the testing of the FBI Ballistic Research Laboratory, this thing performs and had zero issues. And last but not least, we ran a bill drill. So I put my money where my mouth was and showed you guys me shooting with a timer. And I've got to say, drawing from concealment with this was really, really easy. I always find the full-size grips are quite easy for me to index and get my full and comfortable grip onto the pistol. And then as soon as I pulled it out, a couple of my draws, as I was just kind of getting accustomed to the gun, the dot was a little tricky for me to pick up just initially off the draw when I'm going fast, because I'm very much now used to the 2011 or double stack 1911 grip angle. And the Staccato P4X is a little bit more forward of an aggressive grip angle. So I had to kind of search for it a little bit, but once I did some dry fire drawing, I picked that up absolutely no problem. And once I got to where I was running the bill drill, it was very easy to shoot. Once I was locked in, had the dot, and was ready to fire, it was almost like the slide was just tracking backwards. Okay guys, so since this is marketed as a duty gun, we're gonna run a quick bill drill because you might wanna shoot this thing fast. So we got 7 yards, a trusty shot timer. So let's see what it looks like. .238, the draw could have been better, but we will take it. And as you can see, this thing is pretty easy to track. So I would say this is going to be something that a few people out in the world are going to be able to burn it down with. Now let's talk about how did it actually feel to shoot. So I shot a good bit of the C4X over the last few weeks through some various videos. And although it shoots incredibly well, it is not a comfortable gun for me to shoot. I think a little bit of that was the grip size itself and just kind of pushing my hand, trying to fit all of my hand onto the gun in some weird places, but it gave me a lot of hot spots. And just definitely, even with the compensator, was a bit difficult for me to hold on to. And I think it was just because I didn't have a lot of real estate for my hands.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
And so with having this full-size grip on this very high-performing slide and compensator design, it was a super flat shooter. The best way I can describe this one is it was flat. I wouldn't really call it soft, just because the shorter slide. So typically with a full-size 1911, you've got a lot of slide distance to track, and because this is shorter, it doesn't really go that far back. So I felt like it was tracking really fast, but it was super flat still. And the best way I can describe it is a bit more of a push rather than upwards recoil that I was having to control compared to the Staccato HD P, just because it's a pretty much very similar sized gun, just without the compensator. But this one had a lot more of like sort of a backwards push, and it just made it very, very easy and predictable in terms of shooting very quickly. It also is sprung very well. You'll notice in a lot of these slow motion clips that I'm shooting that this doesn't really dip very much. So it's sprung incredibly well just to return to zero and have that dot go right back to where I was initially aiming. And comparing it to both the Staccato HD P4 as well as the Staccato C4X, it was a noticeable improvement for me in terms of the feel when shooting as well as just overall recoil. The C4X gets close, but with this full-size grip, it is just a much easier firearm for me to control. So I love pretty much everything about this pistol, except for one thing, and it's not a huge deal, but I do have a small gripe, and that is going to be on the fit and sort of contouring of the thumb safeties. So they sit right where the beaver tail and frame sort of meet up, and it is obviously blended, but there's still like a very obvious like 90-degree square on both of those that sort of sits high. So as I was shooting this for longer periods of time, I actually ended up just really getting some hot spots right on my hand where both of those sort of spots hit my dominant hand as I'm shooting. So it's a small gripe, something that easily could be changed in the future with just a slightly smaller part. I'd probably more so love to see them just remove a bit of material on their design just right there, so it's not as aggressive into your hand. But outside of that, I really did not have many complaints with this. So for this to be a duty gun, Staccato needed to deliver something a little different. Now, with the success of the C4X line, I think it was a no-brainer that the P4X is the thing that followed. It sure is a contender, if nothing else. And as always, we'll see you on the range.